I'll show you that. With regards to the reason issue, the rationality issue, this first area, first of the three areas, reason, problem of evil, and science, which the new atheists all think is on their side, it gives them full justification in standing up against all forms of theism, especially Christian theism. I want to give you an axiom. It's just a truism that's based on my observation that has been tremendously helpful for me when I go up against people that are much smarter than I am and much more educated and much more lettered and more famous and all of that stuff. And here's the truism. Very intelligent people, brilliant people, educated people, doctors, lawyers, philosophers, PhDs, academics of all types, make very foundational, fundamental mistakes in thinking when it comes to spiritual things. This I've seen across the board. People who are brilliant in their own areas, when it comes to spiritual issues, all of a sudden it's as if they, and I don't mean this ingraciously, but it's almost as if they lose their minds. And they say the most foolish, irrational kinds of things. And they put up arguments that don't go anywhere, and they're deeply impressed by that. I'm going to give you a couple of examples of some of the most famous people in the world in this area and what they say. And you're going to look at it on the screen. You're going to say, oh my goodness, that's not as scary as I thought it would be. So that's the axiom. But before we can get into that, we have to talk a little bit about how does reasoning work. So I'm going to give you a thumbnail sketch, a little tutorial here in critical thinking. It's actually not that hard. And there's kind of a sense in which what we talked about in the workshop today, and I'll finish up with regard to the Columbo tactic tomorrow, is really at the heart and core of what it entails to do good critical thinking. So here's the process. The first thing you have to do is you have to, when you want to assess the legitimacy, reasonableness of somebody else's particular view, first you've got to separate the wheat from the chaff, or you've got to clear the brush, as I say. In other words, you have to be able to identify what part of this presentation is nonsense and what is substance. Now, it turns out that in many arguments or discussions, a lot of it's just nonsense. And what I mean by nonsense is they are statements or issues or attitude that's brought up that really has nothing to do with the point. If the point is that God doesn't exist, for the atheists, then making fun of Christians, ridiculing them, making jokes, calling them names, saying that they're stupid, backwoods, whatever. Do you see that this kind of attack on the individual, whether it's an attack on their character or on their intelligence or on their culture or on their church, or that they're hypocritical, that none of those attacks have, even if they're all true, have anything at all to do with whether God exists or not. This is just distraction. It's irrelevant to the broader question. But much of the time, another way to put it is ridicule is not an argument. You might remember that line, so when somebody's making fun of you to make a point, you can just calmly say, very interesting, but ridicule is not an argument. Do you have anything better than that? And ridicule passes as argument for a lot of people. Christopher Hitchens is a great example. Christopher Hitchens is a very abusive person. Now, I don't know if you know who this man is. He's actually